Apple and Microsoft, $2 trillion companies today, have been rivals in various markets for decades, guided by two of the greatest names in global entrepreneurship. These giants reflected the personalities of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, two icons who experienced different feelings among themselves, including friendship, respect, and even betrayal. What's most impressive is that even as rivals, and after years of seemingly endless legal battles, at a certain point, one of the two icons needed the other's help to preserve his legacy. This moment came in 1997 when Steve Jobs had to move heaven and earth to prevent Apple from collapsing, in an incredible action that led him to even seek help from one of his greatest adversaries, Bill Gates. And when Gates had the chance to let his competitor sink for good, he decided to finance the plan that saved Apple from bankruptcy. But why? Why did Bill Gates save one of his biggest competitors? Why didn't he eliminate one of his greatest foes when he had the chance? In this video, you'll understand Bill Gates' action and why he took this step. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the world of business. If you want to learn more about business, check out the list of books we recommend in the video description or in the pinned comment. The year was 1997, and Apple was struggling to survive after a series of bad decisions. More than 10 years without its founder, the company was trying to survive in the personal computer market and refused to adopt most of its competitors' practices. One of these practices was that Apple's computers had their own systems that did not meet the needs of businesses and users worldwide. As a result, few people were willing to buy the giant's products, especially because they were more expensive than others. While Apple kept its system exclusive, Microsoft's operating system was installed in over 90% of computers worldwide. Since the market was almost entirely Windows-based, developers also focused their efforts on the system, which put Microsoft in total dominance and practically formed a monopoly. Meanwhile, Apple had suffered no less than $1 billion in losses the previous year, and its market value was less than $3 billion, making it a ticking time bomb. After all kinds of attempts to save the company, the board, in a desperate attempt, decided to put Steve Jobs back in charge, when he literally did the unthinkable. Before continuing the video, I have a brief message. These videos take a lot of effort to make, so if you're still watching, leave a like to support our work. Consider also subscribing and leaving a comment below. Any comment helps. Now back to the video's topic. It was June 1997, and Apple had enough cash for only 90 days of operations. However, a few weeks later, an announcement would shock the world. Apple would enter a major partnership with Microsoft. The news was received like a bomb. First, because Apple was partnering with a company that was sweeping its last traces from the market, and second, because Microsoft was an old enemy of Apple. This was because in the 1980s, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates worked side by side to develop applications for Apple computers in a friendly relationship that made Microsoft and Apple partners. However, while working with Jobs, Gates was developing his own operating system that would have extremely similar applications to those he was developing in conjunction with Apple. Thus, Windows was born, a revolutionary product considered theft by Apple fans who claim that Gates stole much of Jobs' technology. The situation pitted Jobs against Gates, and besides severing ties, Apple filed a series of lawsuits against Microsoft. However, despite the fight, while Microsoft licensed its system for computers worldwide, Apple spiraled into self-destruction. And in addition to firing its co-founder, the company also entered bankruptcy proceedings in the following years. And while Microsoft dominated the market, Apple was held hostage and needed an immediate injection of money if it wanted to survive. That's how, on August 6, 1997, Steve Jobs announced that Bill Gates had made a $150 million investment in Apple shares, with no voting rights, ensuring Apple's survival in the years to come, and literally putting Gates as a financier of Apple. In addition to the money, Apple would have Microsoft's Internet Explorer as the default browser on its computers, and for the next 5 years would also receive Microsoft Office on its machines. In other words, besides money, its products would also be more attractive to the market. An apparent bundle of goodies and a contradictory attitude. Why did Bill Gates simply not let Apple die? What did he gain from that attitude? And the answer is not out of guilt or to address past issues, much less to reconcile with his old friend, but rather the preservation of Microsoft itself. While dominating the market, Bill Gates' company began to accumulate lawsuits for alleged predatory practices that eliminated competition. And since 1993, the company had been under evaluation by the U.S. Department of Justice for a supposed breakup, which could turn Microsoft into different companies, all because it had become too big and practically a monopoly. A similar process to the one that dissolved John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil into more than 30 companies decades earlier, putting Microsoft as a company too large to continue existing. And to avoid being split or dismantled, Microsoft literally decided to foster its own market. Microsoft also faced several lawsuits from Apple itself, which could at some point represent a future loss for the company. And with the Knights Agreement between the companies, the lawsuits between the giants were settled, and from then on, Apple was no longer a legal problem for Microsoft. However, thanks to the funding provided by Microsoft, Apple gained a lifeline and oxygen to implement the changes desired by Steve Jobs, which in a few years revived the company. Changes that brought Apple back to the computer market and helped Microsoft to stay off the radar of the Justice Department. In 2001, while holding a total of over 18 million Apple shares, Microsoft was acquitted of most of the charges against it, and thus the discussion of it being a monopoly was ended. After all, what kind of monopoly would save one of its biggest competitors? With this argument, Microsoft escaped the clutches of justice and continued its activities. After the lawsuit was dropped 2 years later, Microsoft divested itself of all the shares it owned of Apple, before the giant inaugurated the smartphone market. A wrong move for the average investor, after all. Today, those shares would be worth billions of dollars, but the end of a move that preserved the integrity of the computing giant. In other words, to avoid losing its fingers, Bill Gates literally gave away some of his rings. But in the end, the move that seemed senseless removed a thorn from its side and made Microsoft exit the authorities' radar. Thus, while many thought he was doing something meaningless, he with very little ensured the integrity of the company that remains intact to this day. Did he make a good deal? Share your opinion with us in the comments. Also, check out the video we've prepared telling the story of how Microsoft's first employee became one of the richest men in the world. Cheers, and until the next video. Do you know which business model offers high profit margins, immense scalability, and requires low initial investment? The startup market specializing in software development is the optimal choice to bring together all these advantages. However, the only place where you will truly find a highly scalable service that demands low investment is with Roadmap. Roadmap has global experience providing consulting and developing apps for startups in the United States, Europe, and Latin America, making it by far the best option for new entrepreneurs. If you want to venture into the premier market, contact Roadmap right away through the website www.roadmap.co/home or via email at contact@roadmap.co.